The Vikings have a massive decision to make with head coach Kevin O'Connell and GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah addressing their respective contract extensions, which has us analyzing the immense impact they've had on the team since their arrival a few seasons ago. We're going to be breaking down all of that in this episode of Vikings Digest, but first make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you don't miss any updates surrounding the Vikings as we head into what should be a tumultuous off-season. And with that, let's head in the first topic of the day, which is KOC addresses extension. So in a press conference the other day, KOC was talking about his extension. If you want to pause it and take a read, or I'll read it here for you, saying, I've had great dialogue with our ownership in this week in reflection as the season came to an end and anything beyond that. I would prefer to kind of keep those discussions internal. What I would say is I love being the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. I love our ownership. I have a great relationship with our ownership. Feel so fortunate, like I said, not only the way they support us, but believe in us, but also the impact they have on our players, our locker room, and ultimately where we all want to go together. Feel very, very great about that. Now, Kevin O'Connell, since getting here, he's walked into a team that has been the top rankings in team culture when voted on in the offseason by players within and outside the organization. Everybody loves the Minnesota Vikings organization and the culture that they have. Everyone talks about what's going on down in Detroit and their grit culture, but what Minnesota has built here is something very different, but also very special as well. And Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah had been at the centerpiece of that since they were brought in at the same time together. And when looking at Kevin O'Connell's impact in the 3 seasons he's had 3 13-plus win seasons, going 13-4 his first year, then 7-10 the second year, which was unfortunate because of the injury to Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson and a lot of other things. And then you had this past season where he went for his best record with the Vikings at 14-3. He's got a 34-17 win-loss record for the team within 51 games, 0 ties with a win-loss percentage of 66.7. And when you look at the top 15 all time, he's right there at number 15. And you look at the company that he's in, Hall of Famers, Guy Chamberlain, John Madden, Vince Lombardi, George Halas, Don Shula, Tony Dungy. And then you also have current coaches like Nick Sirianni, Jim Harbaugh, and Matt LaFleur as well in there. But for Kevin O'Connell in 3 seasons to be in the top 15, coming into a team where there was a lot of question marks surrounding how they were going to do in their first season, and they overachieved. They did get exposed in the playoffs against the Giants that season because there was just things that you couldn't hide in the postseason, and that's what the postseason is made of, is exposing where you're really falling short, because that's when we see the best of teams and what teams really should be. We saw that on full display this season, as we often see with the Vikings in the playoffs, where no matter how great of a regular season we have, it all is dependent on schedule and who you play. The NFC North, they had a cakewalk this year playing the NFC South and the NFC West. So it was a bit easier that way, where there was only the Rams that really gave us trouble in that division, and then we walked through the NFC South. So there was a lot of things at play here where the Vikings and the NFC North in particular kind of had an easy go in this season, where the record really didn't reflect what the team really was. And we saw that in this postseason with where the teams that made it to the divisional round in the NFC Championship, they are where they are now because of how good they are, not just what their record is. And that's what Minnesota showed here. And speaking of records, the Vikings have struggled mightily in road night games. Now, this is counting anything after 6 p.m. at the venue. Since 2015, the Vikings are 6-17 in road night games, regular season and playoffs, including 0-7 under O'Connell. Minnesota is 4-2 when at home in a night game under O'Connell, but the last night win on the road against a team not named the Bears occurred in 2019 at the Cowboys, so Minnesota has considerable room for improvement in such contests. And this is one of the 2 major gripes that we're going to get into that a lot of people seem to have with Kevin O'Connell, is that primetime games, as Vikings fans, we all know that primetime just isn't generally kind to us, generally only against the Bears, and even then that can be a trap game. But in the past few years, night games have been our really big kryptonite, or just really big 4 o'clock window games where it's very tough for Minnesota to really get something going. We saw it with Kirk Cousins and all the primetime struggles, and we saw it with Sam Darnold this season and when the lights were the brightest. So Minnesota needs to shape up those things, and Kevin O'Connell is at the spearhead of those things because you're the head coach. You're the leader of the ship. You're the captain of the ship. You need to make sure that it's smooth sailing in those games because those are typically the biggest ones. And according to the data from NFL GSIS, the Vikings faced 3rd and 1 22 times in the regular season and opted for designed runs 17 times, converted 12, and passed 4 times, converting twice, and had 1 scramble that gained 9 yards. When it was 3rd and 2, the Vikings opted for passes all 15 instances and converted 10 times. So this was another thing that we've talked about on this show as well, where Kevin O'Connell's play calling really needs to take a significant step up in key moments, in key games, and in put away drives. We saw at many points through this season that, and even last season, the season before that, because Kevin O'Connell, he's had a lot of one score games in his coaching tenure, and it's some of the most all time that coaches have ever seen. He's got one of the best records at it, but he's given us heart attacks in the process. So with those games, a lot of them had to do with him not being able to put the game away with great play calling that we saw early on in the game, but then near the end of the game kind of stalling out and just really being conservative, not being overly aggressive. We don't want him to be overly aggressive, but you still want to keep your foot on the gas a little bit and get those put away touchdowns where you can have a 2 possession win at some point instead of all these 1 possession games, which I know we're great at, but save us the heart attack and put games away when you need to, especially on 3rd down. When on 3rd down this season, we saw a lot of offensive play calling where, yeah, we were pretty decent on 3rd down, but when we didn't get it, it was not in a great fashion. It was pretty ugly from a play calling standpoint. But all that being said, what Kevin O'Connell has brought to this team as far as a winning culture in a team that was really decimated after the end of Mike Zimmer's tenure and when Mike Zimmer left, we filled that void nicely with Kevin O'Connell. And the second piece of the puzzle was Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, which is going to take us into our second topic of the day, which is Kwesi's extension. So Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was also addressing the media on his own extension, saying, I think I was at Minnesota football game earlier this year and somebody said, good luck with the contract. And it kind of woke me up because that's just not how I live my life. I don't think I'm entitled to anything. If I sign that contract tomorrow, I'd be running like I was scared, just trying to always earn it. Somebody's chasing you. Somebody's trying to be better than you. You've got to have that mindset. I'm unbelievably grateful to be the general manager of the Vikings, and I want to continue to be. So I'm going to leave this office and keep being the general manager of the Vikings and work hard to try and improve this team, and whatever comes to the future will come. So this is kind of similar to what KOC was saying, how it's just focus on the team next season, just making sure this team can be the best that it can be. But what I really love is that he's not expecting something to be given to him. He's not expecting this contract extension to be given to him because he knows he has to earn it. Like anyone in this league, if you want something in this league or in life, you have to go out and earn it. Nothing is going to be given to you. No one's going to come knocking on your door with an opportunity saying, hey, you want to be a GM of a team? Here you go. That's not how it works. And what he's saying here is that, hey, we didn't get the job done last season. We had a great season, but we need to go out and bring a Lombardi bring a Lombardi to the Twin Cities. It's never been here, so it needs to come to the Twin Cities at some point in the next few seasons. And no one is more hungry than Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah because they are the two main pieces that make this work and making sure that that is something that eventually happens. Especially when you look at Kwesi's draft picks over these seasons. The first one in 2022, you got some guys there that have stayed with this team and have been a really instrumental part. You got Jalen Naylor right there. He was a 6th round pick. Ty Chandler in the 5th round. Then you have Ed Ingram. He's had his ups and downs and his struggles, but he's still really solid. We have some other guys that aren't unfortunately with the team anymore. But then you go into the next season after that with 2023. Jordan Addison, Jaron Hall, he had a little bit of a flash with us for last season, but didn't work out there. So Jordan Addison was the main one there. But what do you notice in these trends is that he goes for a wide selection of offensive and defensive players. He keeps that fresh. And then you look even at this past draft, JJ McCarthy, that was the big one. Dallas Turner as the edge rusher, that was the big one. Kyrie Jackson, unfortunately, rest in peace. This season was for him. Thoughts and prayers go out to all of his family for a very tumultuous year and season. It was very full of emotion, and this season was for them. But then you have Will Reichert as well. He was fantastic this season with a little bit of struggles with injury and later on in the year. But again, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has a very diverse way of drafting and of how he gets those draft picks, making a lot of moves, doing a lot of things here where, hey, we stole a lot of draft picks last year where we didn't think we were going to be in the position we were to get JJ McCarthy, but we eventually got to that. As the draft got closer, those rumblings became more realistic. But initially, people were really worried how the Vikings were going to be able to draft the future to succeed Kirk Cousins after the season that they had. And when looking at some notes and observations about Kwesi's drafting, Of his 23 selections, only a pair were made in a pick slot originally owned by the Vikings, like I just said with all the trading. That resulted in receiver Jordan Addison and then corner Kyrie Jackson. More often than not, the Minnesota Vikings are cashing in picks that didn't originally belong in the Gopher State. Across the 3 drafts, Kwesi pulled off an impressive 11 trades, a clean dozen if we include the pre-draft involving the Texans in 2024. How many of the trades has he won? That's still a debate that's ongoing, but a lot of them have turned out pretty well for the Vikings. And so far, there's an even split between offense and defense. The GM has devoted 11 picks to each side and is still in his young career as Minnesota's lead executive. Obviously, we'll need more time to assess whether there ends up being more effort to bolster one side over the other. As of right now, the balance is as even as it gets. So yes, there's a lot of question marks for the Vikings this offseason within the offensive line and certain other things on defense where you want to really bolster those things down. But Kwesi has done a great job at selecting great talent and making moves to get that talent. We know that he came from Cleveland. Look at what he was able to do with the scouting in Cleveland. They were able to pick up Baker Mayfield. And he picked up players that they didn't pan out for the Browns specifically, but they still did pan out. Baker Mayfield, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., Nick Chubb, all these guys. He brought them in and was saying, hey, these are guys that we can believe in, and those are guys that have talent. And they did. So now he's brought that over to Minnesota, and look at the pieces that we have around that. Jordan Addison as well, J.J. McCarthy. We got all these guys that are in place where we can go on a really significant run here if we have all the right pieces clicking. And that's what we're got to focus on in this draft. That's also part of the reason why we've been so vocal about not signing Sam Darnold, because you don't want to avoid Kirk Cousins 2.0, because we tried that already. We had 6 years of it, and look where it got us. No Lombardi to speak for it, and only just padded stats. So that's what Minnesota wants to avoid. But what do you guys think about the impact that Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah have had on this team since they've arrived? Let us know what you guys think down in the comments. That's going to take us into our final topic of the day, which is comment of the day. We see here from Vikings News today. Let's go Vikings, Skol. We appreciate all the love and support that's been coming out from these comments and reading your guys' takes on what the Vikings should do. The last video on the Aaron Rodgers scenario, that got a lot of divided responses as far as how excited they were and how upset they were about that possibility. But we always look forward to reading those takes nevertheless and hearing what Vikings fans have to say. But that's going to do it for this episode of Vikings Digest. Make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of the new videos. But with that, I've been your host, Griffin. Take care.